we're excited to have this community conversation happen today and our guest speakers and all of you attending. Just some housekeeping items. If you would put yourself on mute while we're chatting, and then we'll have the chat box going and you can raise your hand, participate. We love participation. That's how this conversation evolves. And let's see, what else? We hope that you all have registered or will be registering and joining us in Phoenix for our annual conference in October. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our CEO, Neftali Serrano, and thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. And for those of you that don't know Tanya, she's just a fantastic member of our team. She leads and organizes the business behind CFHA, but she also co-leads these community conversations. And Tanya, I just want to say thank you for doing that for us with Corey, who's a grad student member who partners with her on this. They do a great job on these things. So yeah, thanks, Tanya. This is a conversation that is near and dear to my heart, in large part because I find myself in the stage of career that we're going to be talking about today. And so it's been on my mind. And one of the things that we did in the spring at our spring conference was focus a lot more on early career professionals and sort of skills that they needed and stage related issues related to career development, etc. But we didn't want to neglect the folks in our community, both who are joining us live and those who are seeing this recording on our integrated care news site, and say, there's actually now a lot more professionals, specifically those who are in integrated care or integrated care career tangential to that career, who are in their mid to late career, and many who are now in retirement, having sort of graduated from this field of work. What about those folks? What are the things that they need, particular to their stages of development and career? So that's the nature of our conversation today. As Tanya said, please feel free to throw things in the chat. And if you'd like to kind of make a comment, please just put your hand up. You know how to do that with the Zoom button. And we're happy to have you join in on the conversation. It truly is a conversation. So our conversationalists today, our lead conversationalists, are folks that we handpicked to talk a little bit about their experiences and share some about themselves. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I'm going to give them each a starter question to answer as part of their basic introduction. So here's the starter question. The starter question is, what is one challenge that you can identify that is specific to this stage of your professional career? So one challenge that you can identify at this particular stage of your professional career. There may be many. We're just asking you to identify one, and then we'll use that as a way of jumping off our conversation. So I'm going to start with, to my right here on my screen, Jodi Polaha. Jodi's in Tennessee. Jodi, introduce yourself and what's one challenge at this stage?
So I'm Jodi Polaha, and I'm a professor in the Department of Family Medicine at East Tennessee State University and the Quillen College of Medicine. And I direct the Institute for Integrated Behavioral Health, which is an enterprise that I designed and initiated about 3 years ago, almost 4. I have some other things that I do. I'm a co-editor for the journal Family Systems and Health, and I also am an elected official in Washington County. I'm a county commissioner. And I'm also married and have 2 teenagers. What I find challenging, specific to what I would consider like the late stage of middle, although it depends on the day. Sometimes I feel like I'm very close to the end of the end. Never sure exactly where I am in that spectrum. Is just continuing to find things that are interesting and new, and feeling like, oh Lord, not this again. Like the same problems that I've been solving for 25 years. And I started my career in integrated care in 1998. So I've been doing this work for a long time. I didn't come to it in the middle of my career. It's been 25 plus years of that. So finding ways to keep it new and fresh and do different things that challenge me and feel exciting. I think that is probably the biggest challenge that I face.
Thanks, Jody. Finding the new was one of the themes that I was hoping to pick out of this conversation for sure. Next is Natalie Lefkovich in Philadelphia. So Natalie, say hello.
Hello. I'm Natalie Lefkovich. Excuse me. I am CEO of the Health Federation of Philadelphia, which is a nonprofit public health organization that supports a network of community health centers in southeastern Pennsylvania. So career in integrated health is one of the things that I work on and lead, that is kind of central to our purpose of supporting the quality, access, efficiency of community-based primary care in this region. And I am in my late career. And I'm staring down retirement in something less than 2 years from now. And the challenge at this stage of my life is twofold. One is to ensure that the work has enough legs and structure and support to be sustainable without me. And the other is how I continue without that work. So for my own, sense of purpose and usefulness. And I have, I'm a planner, so I've been thinking about this for 10 years, at least. And I think I have a pretty good idea, but it's yet to be executed, so.
Thanks, Natalie. There's a lot to unpack there. I hope we get to different parts of that story. But one theme I'll pick out there is actually that you start thinking about that next place in your life before it's there. And that process is a much more gradual process than you would imagine maybe an early career. So we'll unpack that. Next up, going all the way up to New Hampshire's is Bill Gunn.
Hi, yeah, thanks for CFHA for inviting me to do this. So I am in New Hampshire right this minute, but live on the coast of Maine. So we're very close, just right across the river here. I came to this late middle. I'm towards the end. I'm not sure where I am actually. Retirement is a word of doing. To me, is kind of doing what you feel like you want to be doing. It seems like a definition of retirement. It could be full on work like Sandy Blunt there. Oh, he's on a boat now, so maybe that's just a backdrop. Or it could be doing something completely different or something in the middle. So I'm not. But doing something you feel is passionate, I think, as Jody mentioned, has been important. And my career in integrated care was really out of family medicine, like a number of us who, I sort of came to this, and CFHA was really born out of a group that was part of the Society for Teachers in Family Medicine in the mid-90s to really try to take some action on a systemic level rather than just get together every year and talk about education. So I came into it through that pathway and retired, quote unquote, from family medicine in 2017 because the residents just kept getting younger and younger and younger. And I wasn't sure. there are some folks I've talked to a lot of people about retirement planning. So, and there are some people that just say, I'm going to wait till it happens and then I'll decide. So that's the opposite of the planners. Like Natalie said, you've been talking about this for 10 years. So I'm probably in the middle somewhere. I mean, I thought about it a lot. Now I'm professionally do some consulting projects, so usually around integrated care, but have a small private practice a couple days a week. That's where I am right now for 8 or 10 people who I see, and it's the total opposite of integrated care. I went for some training in one of the trauma-based methods, AEDP, which is like some of you may have heard it. Some that it's a focused, often trauma-based individual model that is intense. So it's about as opposite from how I spent 30 some years, just to challenge myself. It was interesting, it was new, it was different. And yet my daughter-in-law called yesterday and said, on Monday, can you take the group of 8-year-olds out on the boat? And I'm going, I've got to work on Monday. Why do I do that? So there's these questions that I continue to go, am I doing what I want to be doing? So I think you sort of live in that question rather than answer it. At least for me, that's sort of been it is. So I guess that's the challenge for me, the work-life balance at this stage of feeling productive, which leads to good feelings, at the same time being flexible and loose, to be able to spend time with grandkids and friends and take trips, and so forth. So that's the biggest challenge for me right now. So.
Thanks, Bill. Boy, each of you did a great job of kicking off some of these key themes, and there's lots to unpack there as well. But I think one of the themes, Bill, that I heard you talk about was how the definition of these words, when it becomes real, we realize they're not as solid. So retirement, right? What does that feel like? Well, when you're early in your career, you may have this vision of what retirement means. And then when you get there, it's a lot more squishy. And there is some internal dialogue, sometimes conflict around what that actually means day to day. Your example of the grandkids versus your work day on Monday is a great way of knowing, oh, your tensions are not automatically resolved because you made it to retirement, right? Another key theme. All right. So thank you for introducing yourselves and introducing this conversation. I'll just kick off the conversation, but as we go, please feel free to crosstalk, and of course, audience, come in and participate. I think one of the things that I want to ask you all is to sort of identify some of the feelings that you first started having when you entered your current stage in your career. For Natalie, that was 10 years ago when you started just thinking about it, right? Maybe Bill, for you, was a little bit later than that. But what were you feeling that let you know that you were even in that stage, right? How did you know you were there, right? It's easy when you're an early career professional, you just know, right? I'm just starting out. But it's often hard to actually kind of locate yourself and realize, oh, I'm at this stage of my career. Like, how did you know that this is where you were? And how did you come to kind of grips with that in a healthy way?
I don't know about the caveat of in a healthy way, but
that was where I got stuck too.
Before you got there, I had an answer. For me, and this is about me, it was not in any way clear. It still isn't from a feelings standpoint. One thing that informs me is the reality of the calendar, and the sense that at some point, it's the right thing to do to let in of fresh perspectives, younger sensibilities, whatever. but that's balanced against my own love of the work and reluctance to not be part of it. And maybe the answer to resolving those feelings is what Bill was saying, which is to keep working, but working somewhat differently, making space for other things. Fake it till you make it. So even though I have in my mind a kind of date certain for this transition, my feelings are far from resolved about it. But another indicator that I want to raise is my scope of work is much broader than integrated care, although this has become a very important personal commitment for me. When you start to realize that you're not equally interested in learning new stuff, in mastering new stuff in all of whatever the breadth of your career is, that's an indicator. For me, that's technology. Can I? Yes, but do I want to? No.
Other thoughts on that?
I will second that point about just there's some material that comes to me that I either think I have already done this 1,000 times and I'm not doing it again. Like whatever it is, advocating for something that I've been advocating for, or it's something new. And it's like, I just don't have it in me to learn this whole new thing, whatever it is. Technology is a great example, but I don't think exclusive to that. And so those are definitely have been signs for me. And I just wanted to second that. But the other thing that started really occurring pretty frequently was realizing that early career and younger colleagues would come to me with problems that I had the knowledge base and or the networks and or the experience with, that I could just quickly and easily sort of direct and engage them. And I felt like really effective through other people. And I had never had that experience of before. And it was kind of like this moment where I was like, oh, I'm in a different role here. Like this, I'm empowered in that role and capable in that role where I can just intervene with someone and then they go out and are fully capable of doing big things.
I think for me, that one of the things that was really important to me from integrated care all the way through was something I learned from a mentor who was one of the earliest people in in this field. Did a lot of training of Mac Baird and Bill Daugherty and some of the early Dave Waters, who was a psychologist at the University of Virginia. And I kind of followed him along the way. And one of his big messages was, he created something they called the Family Stress Clinic, which was training other behavioral health folks in this method back in the mid-70s, long before CFHA was even a thought. So all my career I've searched out places and had other like-minded folks to mentor and to kind of work with. Matt Martin, who's on this, was one of them. I still can't think of him as mid-career, but I'll work hard on that. But that's been an important part for me. So subsequently leaving and retiring, it was really important to turn it over. I felt like where I was in New Hampshire, had created something. It was really important to see if I could get the time from the institution to, have somebody come in, cross over, and then have them pick up and take off and make it even better a program. It felt like you had birthed this thing really from the beginning of a residency, and it felt very fragile. And I wanted to, in its teenagehood, turn it over. That was incredibly important to me at that time, and felt very fortunate to be able to do that. So I think that kind of mentoring that Jody was talking about, I think that's always been such a critical thing, ending with trying to turn it over to a new group.
Yeah, I love that reframe that both you and Jody talked about around actually noticing new instincts. And so you're framing it, Bill, as a new instinct to kind of want to hand off and teach and mentor. And maybe naturally, you, especially in family medicine, you probably had that throughout your career on some level, but it gets amped up at this stage. And sometimes people call it legacy. That sounds a little too cold in a way. There is this passion, this drive to kind of do something with what you've worked and hand it off in a way that feels substantial. And then Jody, you framed it more as a almost like you have this experience that you can draw on where you're now guiding others in ways that you found yourself being guided previously. And also the connectedness, right? You have networks and people that you know and relationships that you've built up over time that you can access in important ways to help others who are at early stages of their career. So yeah, it's not just, you don't just locate yourself in this stage via the negative, like the end is near, but also by some of the positive in terms of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I'd come this far and how much I have to give and how much I can empower others in this way. So that's a really hopeful kind of approach for me. Switching gears somewhat here.
Neftali, if I can just put a finer point on that too. There's a little bit of it. They kind of work together in a way in that, like, I'm tired of solving this type of problem. But like the person bringing it to me is raring to go, and I know who they need to talk to, and I can find the resources, and I'm willing to make a few phone calls, and my voice gets them connected where they need to get connected. So they're solving it. And I get to just sort of, it's those kinds of experiences that made me feel empowered in this stage of my career and glad to be in this stage of my career and you know, kind of hopeful, like you said, for sure.
Like, if I could, I'd like to add another nuance to this theme. The reason that it takes arguably 10 or more years, and I said 10 because more sounds silly, but it actually has been more. For me, it started with a flashbulb about what is important, what is truly objectively important about what I know or what I do, and what is purely me, what is purely mine. And going through an incremental multi-year discernment process about what needs to be memorialized, institutionalized, and what is just mine and not therefore doesn't matter in a long-term sense, right? And embedded in that discernment process is also what, from my point of view as the chief executive of an organization that I was instrumental in building, is how do I make sure that by the time I step away, that I am the most dispensable part of it? So which of those important parts have either been fully handed off, fully embedded in something else, fully memorialized for institutional memory? That's why it takes 10 years. So.
I'm going to pick out a little take home there that I think is really important. So the nugget there, I think, is, and this is what has struck me about this phase as I find myself mid to mid-late career, is that it takes just as much intentionality at this stage as it did launching my career. And that was a complete surprise to me. Like that has hit me like a bucket of cold water. For some reason, I don't know what and maybe you all can elucidate this, I kind of thought it would just happen. Like things would unfold, you'd arrive and then you'd be there already. So it would just go from there. And what you're talking about, Natalie, really strikes me, that it really, and I love the word you use, takes a discernment process that is intentional around distilling what are the essentials of what you have done and accomplished and what you've put into place wherever you are, and separate from just what is sort of just unique to your own contribution, right? Something that you only could contribute to the thing. And in that way, you are able to hand it off, right? And that's a big part of the satisfaction that you get at this stage, which again ties back into what you said, Jody, around that joy you get when you face that frustration around something that you don't want to do necessarily because it's done it 1,000 times or just not interesting to you. But then you get that joy out of empowering others to build and grow off of what you're handing off. That's huge. That and intentionality around that has really helped me put a new frame on what I'm supposed to be doing at this part of my career. So one of the other things, big themes that you all talked about in the opening was around I'm having trouble framing it because it's not just finding the new, but it's sort of like finding a new rhythm to life, if that makes sense. And Bill, I think you talked a lot about this, like what is this new rhythm supposed to be? Natalie, you talked about kind of trying to foresee what the best kind of rhythm might be, that it doesn't necessarily feel the same way, so to speak. And Jody, I think in what you've talked about, some of that friction that you feel sometimes in engaging some things, I've found that relates to just a desire to find a new rhythm, that the old rhythm of push, 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 build career, climb the ladder, maybe is not as, that's not what this stage is about. It's not what the rhythm looks like. So if you can discern a question in there, answer it. But basically it's something around, so how do you figure out finding a new rhythm to meet the needs that you uniquely have where you are in your professional career? How do you make that work? And answer personally, right? Obviously we can't generalize to every human being on the planet, but how do you uniquely do it?
Can you say it again real quick there, Neftali? I sort of lost
You want me to repeat it?
well, just the quick trigger.
Yes. So finding a new rhythm in your life, like you talked about with grandkids versus, it's sort of like you're in between. And I the reason I bring it up is because frankly, Bill, more and more people that I meet in our circles is very few that I know that are like, at least at the ages we're talking about, fully retired and like just full baked. They've just are playing golf all day long, right? That's not a rhythm that most people I know, especially those in healthcare, end up moving towards. But there's a different rhythm in mid to late career. How do you uniquely find that rhythm for yourself? How do you figure out what works?
I one day at a time. I think the secret from my point of view is if you quote retire, that is step away from whatever you've been doing, full time, and still able to work or still able to find structure and purpose and some level of satisfaction in how you live your life, implies that you're kind of open to possibility. You're keeping your senses primed to see the opportunity for that purpose, structure, balance, whatever. I don't think you predetermine that. And I think that's what Bill said in the first place, is that, he's been at it for a little while and he's still figuring it out week to week.
Yeah. I think it's I mean, there are people who actually a close friend here in New Hampshire who was a therapist, private practice, not an integrated care for 25, 30 years. When he retired, he's now a jazz musician full time. I mean, that's what he always wanted to do. And, people want to open a bake store. So there's part of me that's envious of that kind of, I want to go be a painter and just completely transform oneself. So that's appealing. I don't have anything like that. There was nothing driving me like that yet. So, but I think it is for me, it's just been trying to live in the question, not try to answer the question, but to live in it. And so that's sort of the day to day, week to week. Like I constantly am thinking, is this the right balance? Do I even want to be doing this private practice? I committed to 5 years of it, but that's arbitrary. I know maybe this is so there are days it feels like I'm off sync, and there are days that feels like this is just about right. And so and then if there's too much ample time, I end up creating more work for myself in some way. So it's a constant living in the question, not answering it, I guess, is the bottom line to me.
Mm.
Sandy's got a question.
Hi. The one piece that I feel strongly that I haven't heard it mentioned is the sense of limited time that I feel. I come from a line of long livers. My dad died at 102, so that would sound like I got lots of time left. But I don't know how long I'm going to have a brain. I watch my friends. I hang out with people. We have what we call the organ recital, where we sit down and talk about which organs are still working.
It's a positive reframe about
it. That's part of it. Yeah. Where, and so, and the
uh-oh, Sandy, I think we
lost you. Yeah. Looks like
Now you're muted.
Yeah.
I won't, if I go away again, I'll just let it go. But the paradoxical piece is I've gotten older. I've been able to get to tables and compute in ways I never would have earlier in my career. I mean, I have to be the person who's been at it for a gazillion years to get to the table to talk to this government person or that CEO kind of thing. And so that's the piece that I've struggled with, is how do I keep going, but I don't want to do anything I don't want to do anymore. I'm tired of that. And I left my job that I'd had for 20 years at the age of 70 and got a new job and did that for 5 years. And so and now I'm doing another job, that my consulting kinds of stuff and teaching the course, the leadership course. I've learned so much doing that. So the stay interested, I'm echoing a theme. Do stuff that you enjoy and relevant, I'm totally echoing a theme. But the piece is, how do I get you to hear me, not say, Sandy, you're so smart, but to listen to what I've been trying to tell you before I can't really do it anymore. And that kind of haunts me. And now I'll jump off.
Well, don't jump off the boat, Sandy, but stay there with us. Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if you all have a reaction to that, Jody.
I was just going to say that certainly I think I'm just hardwired to feel like the edge of how much time do I have? Because I've always thought that. I mean, I don't always, but I feel like for a long time I've had that sense of like, am I living every way I can? But I would just say that in the late part of mid-career, it just depends on your personal timeline and other parts of your life. But there's not just, you're not just trying to find a rhythm in your career. It's like there's a whole orchestra of instruments, because you got the family and the kids are growing up. And I just put one in college this week, so that music just changed. And I've got my parents down the street, and my dad was in the hospital for a few days last week, so there's a whole song going on over there. And then I've got some stuff I've done now. I've been in this community for almost 20 years. I'm part of a lot of community activities. I'm a county commissioner. There's like, that's, so it's, you know, it's a really interesting mixture of rhythms that you're trying to balance and experience and potentiate across all of them, and still also thinking, which of these do I really want to be doing? Which of these really matter to me? And I think that question gets stronger and stronger over time. And I don't know how it is as you get past the stage I'm in now, and you have fewer people and responsibilities, how that changes. But right now it feels like there's a lot of rhythms I'm trying to coordinate.
I love that imagery of an orchestra and calling out certain instruments louder at different points in time, because I think that's what I hear everyone doing. It's not that the music stops playing, it's that you're calling out certain themes, certain instruments, they get louder, more refined, more focused. That sounds right to me. There's certain tunes that definitely draw my ear in my stage that I want to listen to. As Sandy said, there's certain things I want to do and certain things I just don't want to do. And that I think does start earlier than you think. And you have to figure out a way to listen to that while still kind of balancing all that. And I think one metaphor, and please do not take this the wrong way, I'm a loving father, but one metaphor is parenting kids. Like at a certain point, I'm at that point where I'm ready to kick some of my kids out of the house. It just, yeah. I've launched one into college. One is almost on her way. She's a senior. And I feel the parenting muscles weakening, like the desire to do the same sorts of parenting things that I've been doing for now 19 years are not the same, right? I can see how being a grandparent is going to feel very different already in that respect, right? And so that's calling out different themes there, and that leads to the different rhythms. So thank you for that, Jody and Sandy. That really helps me to kind of think through that. Now, what that does bring to mind, and this is what this whole conversation for me brings to mind, is how do you process this stuff? Because this is a lot of stuff. The things that you all have called out in the work that you've done, whether it's the discernment process that Natalie's talking about, Bill talking about the negotiations and learning how to live into the question instead of answering the question. How do you process all of that? Who do you process that with to kind of be successful in that, right? Because we think of early career, we think of mentorship, and we all, I know, can think of people we turn to help us. What do we do now? Because that's the challenge I find often now is, who do I turn to now? You have any thoughts about how you particularly how you process these very complicated, complex themes?
With your therapist?
I just convinced my dean to allow me to get a leadership coach. And I don't know if that's going to work or be helpful. But I interviewed a number of people and got a lot of recommendations from folks. And I'm optimistic because it has gotten to be so complicated. And there are a number of directions in thinking about a 5-year and a 10-year plan, and just trying to figure out, like, what do I want that to look like? And knowing that my youngest will be out of the house in a few years, and there'll be more time and more opportunities for me to use all that I've built over all of my career. So I don't know, to be determined, but I don't feel like there are a lot of people to turn to. I think I was like you, Neftali, I was looking forward to this conversation for that very reason.
Jody, you just said that the more time and opportunity. And so you're at a stage where you're seeing more time as a gift, as a benefit, as an opportunity, not as a scary place of emptiness. That's a very different, having more time. People always say that, oh, when you retire, you'll have more time to fill in the blank. And right. I look at them blankly and say, and?
Right.
So the people that I find useful to talk to are people who are maybe a half step ahead of me in process. I collect retirement stories hungrily everywhere I go. But I also value the fact that my circle of friends and colleagues, and with emphasis on the relationships that are colleague plus, is a very generationally diverse circle. And so that balance of looking at, models of how people are navigating this phase ahead of me, but also trying to kind of stay in tune and engaged with the energy of people at the, closer to the front end, helps me not to be terrified.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. I mean, it's maybe old and stereotypical, but that men have a harder time having relationships with each other and spending time with each other. So that may have changed. I hope it has, but that's always been critical to me and continues to be. So I didn't have any brothers. I had two sisters, so I identified without their consent seven men in my life over time from college on that I consider my brothers, and so we get together in various ways and pretend we're younger, or we talk about talk about real things. It's not just like how the Red Sox doing sort of stuff. I mean, we get to a level that you can ask more vulnerable questions. So I feel very fortunate, and I am grateful for them, and that continues, both folks from CFHA and outside in my other life. So I think that's important to maintain, certainly for one. And I like Natalie's, looking at the step ahead. I mentioned Dave Waters. There's another an internist who took a leap in the consulting, Tony Sookman, who relationship-centered care. Somebody may have heard him, but he's recently retired. He said one of the things he's really focused on is being rather than doing. Just trying to be present rather than having to check the list and do stuff and what's the schedule. And that's been really hard, but something that's really been a major theme in his head as he goes through his life. So that struck me. So there are things that you kind of learn from people that I want to try on and see if it works for me. So I think being open to those, I think is important.
Natalie, looked like you're going to say something.
Neftali, you mentioned something that triggered a word. You said the parenting muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that concept is really critically important to adapt to various stages of career and life in general, is to unless your aspiration is to go be a jazz musician, and you have that whole alternative passion, I think there are a lucky few who have that. If you want to hold on to the various aspects of your productive life, then it's important to keep exercising that muscle so that it doesn't atrophy, because the the next step from atrophy is inertia. So finding ways to exercise that muscle and not let it go. Mm-hmm. And as a parent, trust me, it never ends.
Yes, it just morphs into other headaches. I know. And joys. It's the end of the summer. Understand. There are parents out there understand. It's the end of the summer. You want your kids out of your house.
Hey, Neftali, there have been some great comments in the chat. So maybe getting some input from others. Kimberly, that's a great comment about looking around for the grown-ups. I can really relate to that and going, uh-oh, it's me. So it'd be interesting to hear what reactions other folks have to this.
Yeah, absolutely. Has something struck you as an audience member? Is there something that you want to kind of pick up on and ask our speaker participants here?
I guess I can chime in. And first off, sorry for crashing the party. I know I'm probably not technically mid-career. I'm 13 years out of training with family medicine, so I think I might be middle-ish. New. I'm early career with integrated care. I've only been doing integrated care a few years where I'm at and trying to learn from you guys of how to make that a job where I can still see patients and still lead the movement at my organization. So thanks for letting me crash the party today. But 100% with the imposter syndrome and the looking around and the grown-ups and finally maybe now feeling like I have something to contribute where it's, I've been trying to just feel, confident in saying, hey, this is a movement that's bigger than just, some little thing I'm thinking of. Look at all these great smart people across the country like you guys that are doing it and trying to apply that at my local health system is my current journey and just learn so much from all of you. So thanks for letting me listen in.
I thought you were going to check IDs and make sure that people are old enough here.
Fair enough.
So welcome to the party here. That's great. It's get a head start on this. So.
And honestly, just a quick comment before we get to you, Kamlesh. I think my observation has been, having lived with a physician, is that the physician life cycle is different, and mid-career comes sooner, in large part because you're in training for so long. But then because the life cycle of a physician, especially these days, is very different. So I think if you're feeling, that's why I asked that question of how do you know you're there? If you're feeling some of those things, then you're probably, you're probably there. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Kamlesh, thank you for raising your hand.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for all your sharings, and a lot of it resonated with me. I think that it's so helpful to have the dialogue and hear that, that others are going through some similar things, right? And so that is validating. Just things like you look around and like, oh wow, I'm grown up. I'm the older one. I'm in my mid-career. I hope I have 10 years left, and then I can retire. But getting that, like that, there is the imposter syndrome. But what happens at that later in the career is that really others appreciating and coming to you and saying they see you as a role model, and you just like been going along life just taking things for granted, like not realizing the skills and approach that you have, the personality, the gifts, those are something, right, where we can easily take them for granted because they're so close to us. We've been using those things every day, and then other people come along and say that's something. So I think that's been really great. And then finding other ways to meaning in work, which is like not just successfully completing a project, but it's like it's the whole shift to the working as a team in collaborating, like changing the pace and rhythm of things so that people can be involved and can contribute. And it's not about more of the hard stuff, even though that matters, results matter, but it's how we get there. And then there's the I guess trying to like, I don't even want to say what year I'm turning this year, like when my birthday came and the team celebrating. only this year did I actually tell people how many years I've been married, because that tells you kind of how old you are. Or your kids, like, you know, I have a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old, and, you know, people get surprised every time I say that. They're like, what? Like, you know, someone thought I'd been married like a year, and I've been married a very long time. You know, like, there's just all these different reactions, and I don't want to know what to do with them. But I guess it doesn't matter anymore. You know, as much as it did before, that I have to hide behind this, like, I'm mid-career. And then just yeah, like, not really carving out what, you know, they always say, what is it that you want to do in 5 years? I don't write that on my performance evaluations. Like, I'm just, you know, yeah. So it's like, what do I want to do in the next year or two? Like, why think about 5 years from now? I can't plan it all out. So I don't know what with retirement, but definitely looking forward to spending more time on hobbies and activities, and seeing my role in the community as well, that I don't have really time for. And parenting doesn't end. I thought I was done when my kids were like later in their teens, and like, but yeah, a whole nother set of headaches and stress keeps us full of life with all these challenges. So, but thanks everyone for sharing. I did want to say about a leadership coach. Like, I have thought, like, talked about it with my boss as well, and somebody did mention about a leader. Jody mentioned it about getting a leadership coach, and I guess I have to figure out, like, what would I want to focus on. Like, I mean, I don't know how I would use a leadership coach. So if there's anything someone can say about that, about how a leadership coach could help, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll be very quick on that, because I want to get to Kimberly here, but thank you so much for your great comments. I started some executive coaching in January of this year, and it's invaluable. So you don't have to figure out what you're going to focus on ahead of time. That's part of their job, is to help you figure that out. It helps to do some of that work, but you don't have to. Just having the opportunity to get at the meta level of how you lead gets you somehow to what these questions we've been talking about now, around using your best attributes on behalf of your teams. So if you're on the fence about it, yes, do it. Figure out a way financially. It's expensive, but figure it out. I think it's helpful. And you also gave me another idea before we wrap up today. If everyone who is willing, I'm not going to force them, if willing, could put in the chat something that people turn to them for, right? I want you to leave here knowing, yeah, you have something that people turn to you for. What is it that people turn to you for? What do they look to you for now? Please put that in the chat as a way of reifying and empowering your sense of self. All right, Kimberly, and then Jeffrey.
Well, thanks for having us, and the fact that we're just able to attend this probably speaks to the fact that we're mid to late to career, because when you're early career, you have no time for these kinds of things. And so, yeah, I was thinking about, realizing that I was a grown-up. That happened a few years back. I've adjusted, and it feels like, like you became a new parent, and now you're pretty used to being a parent. And I feel like part of this stage in development is being able to I'm a psychiatrist in rural Oregon. I've been doing integrated care here for 14 years. So it's like, I have this teenager, and they're doing so great. And there have been all these challenges and just different, kind of steps forward and steps back, but I feel like we have a lot to be proud of. And so it's almost like like that parent metaphor. So I do think some gratitude, and I think a big part of how well I'm doing, how much appreciation I have for my career right now is also the fact that I took a sabbatical last year. So I would strongly recommend that. I think that used to be a given for someone in, any kind of like academic or medical career. And it no longer, most people will go their whole career without doing that. And strongly recommend. Happy to talk more about that. And one of my mentors told me also, just never work full time, which is something I always tell people as well. It always leaves room for, other things you're passionate about. And, maybe those of us who don't have another passion to move on to, like being a jazz musician, maybe this is our passion. So it's certainly, a passion for me, and one of my passions, not the only one, but just to, also have some gratitude that we get to do this work that we're passionate about.
Great thoughts, Kimberly. Thank you so much. My friend Jeff Ring on the West Coast.
Hey, greetings from LA. I'm so loving this conversation, and I'm loving the discussion, and also just seeing so many of you with whom we've shared some really delicious professional adventures together. And I just resonate really to all of the pushes and pulls in this. And one more for me that's particularly consternating is just the issue of privilege. The privilege as a white man, as a man of resources, to be able to think at 62 about work or not, and when or not to stop, and knowing that so many others don't have the luxury of that decision. And part A, and then part B is just the work that I'm particularly committed to is about social justice and dismantling sort of power dynamics. And the world's getting worse. Like, I don't see how I can stop doing that work in this moment of history. So the pulls are just like, I'm like an octopus, right? I just feel like I'm pulled in so many different ways. That being said, this conversation has been very healing and connecting for me. It's certainly awakened a lot more of a conversation I want to have with myself and with others about this topic. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. That really helped to add that part to it, because I think that's such a critical piece. We just don't, it goes unsaid too many times. So just one last sort of thought, Natalie, that's I don't know, when I on the leadership thing, I hired a retirement coach at one point. There are those out there, and a licensed social worker is doing this full time now. It was all virtual, and as you can imagine, it was a bunch of assessments to fill out, kind of like a career thing. And then she asked a lot of questions. It's very good, very productive. Pay $500 or whatever it was, and that was helpful. And then I talked to a family doc. This is sort of exempling our different professions, and he said, retirement, you just got to remember two things, right? This is free. I won't charge you anything for this. The first one is say no to everything for a year, like a board and all that stuff. Number two, spend more time with family and friends. That's it. In typical, primary care physician, that's cuts to the chase. Here's the thing. So I just thought it was humorous to contrast in our roles and cultures that would have been two completely different responses to this question.
Yeah. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I just want to say thank you. Jeff, the word healing is right. I think having the sense of connectedness around these pushes and pulls is what helps us get through it. And just naming them oftentimes and knowing that others are experiencing it, that we have lots of similarities in this is so helpful. I wonder if we should have more of this kind of conversation to help cultivate our careers and our work. Oops, sorry. And so, yeah, I'm going to maybe have some conversations offline with you all who have attended today and see what your interests are. What do you need, right? How can we as CFHA, if we can create a space, what would that look like for you all? Because that's part of this intergenerational ladder is what's crucial for developing healthy people and healthy fields and careers in medicine, behavioral health, and beyond. So yeah, give it some thought. If you have thoughts, I'm open. But thank you so much for spending this time together. May you have a great rest of your Tuesday.
Thanks, everybody.